Chapter 3. The cargo bay aboard S&R Black bristled with activity. The sole Federation Marine Corps SFMC vessel was on the move, its remaining ZG Marines suiting up to get Mira fitted with a tow harness. Gunny Cartwright yelled commands while he ticked off a list of supplies on a hollow sheet. In a few hours, a Kuiper Belt object, KBO, larger than the 1-kilometer derelict ship they were supposed to tow back to Neptune, would enter the area. There was only a slight chance of a collision, but Dunn, captain of the S&R Black, wasn't willing to take that risk, not with one of his squad seemingly trapped aboard the floating hulk. Lieutenant Talby watched Gunny's squad, 3 privates and a PFC, scramble to load the towing harness aboard the remaining ZG skiff. Lance Corporal Wendt, injured during the refuel mission at Pluto and therefore not with Callimore's squad when they crashed on Mira, helped the newbies load up. Gunny yelled at him most of all, and Talby knew why. Wendt's carelessness at Pluto might have cost Callimore's squad their lives. There was no way to tell if having an extra Marine aboard their skiff would have saved them from a crash. From the look on Wendt's face, no one knew that fact better than him. Talby walked to the SV-52. The SFMC support vehicle had already been refueled and resupplied. He connected his block, a cybernetic implant, to the 52's computer and requested a status report. His block lit up with information regarding oxygen reserves, weaponry, installed survival gear, and fuel. The 52 was ready. All he had to do was jump in the cockpit, open the bay doors, and fly her out into the darkness of space. His flight suit itched against his skin, and he felt naked without his helmet. He needed to get out there, fly to the bow, and see if he could find any trace of Callimore's squad. But first, they had to halt Mira's end-over-end spin and get the craft out of harm's way. As soon as Gunny's squad was ready with their gear, the captain would give the order to open the bay, and Talby could get back out into space. They'd been out of communication with Callimore's squad for nearly 40 minutes. In that amount of time, the missing Marines could have run out of oxygen or bled out. He only hoped they managed to find a safe space aboard Mira where they could find O2 and emergency medical packs. If not, then Talby could only hope to retrieve the bodies. The thought made him sick to his stomach. Laughable, really, for Marines like Dickerson and Carbonaro, who had both survived the rebellion on Mars as well as the satellite wars, to perish aboard a ghost ship rather than being shot by an enemy. Out here in deep space, Mira was their enemy as well as their goal. If his 4 Marines had died for this useless hunk of metal, he'd never forgive the Colonel for sending S&R Black here in the first place. Gunny was talking with Wendt in a low voice. The remaining ray, little more than a flying brick, would ferry Gunny's squad over to the unpowered vessel while bringing the tow harness along for the ride. Adding Wendt to Gunny's squad meant he'd have 5 Marines, including himself, to place the harness on Mira. They could do it, but it would take a while. Add in the fact that besides Wendt, the most senior member of the fire teams was a PFC, and it complicated matters considerably. Talby thought that in the best-case scenario, Gunny's squad would suffer at least 1 casualty. He didn't want to consider the worst case. Not that any of it mattered. Until Mira was stable, they'd no idea if they could even rig up the tow harness. Gunny finished with Wendt and turned to face Talby. The man's stony face regarded him without emotion.
"Lieutenant, we have the supplies aboard and the harness is ready."
Good job, Gunny. He initiated a comms connection to S&R Black's bridge. Captain, this is Talby.
"Go ahead."
Gunny's squad is ready. My 52 is ready. We are a go for egress.
"Acknowledged, Lieutenant."
Captain Dunn's voice held no emotion, although Talby knew his commanding officer was just as stressed out as he was.
"We'll open the bay doors as soon as you give the all clear. Oakes has finished moving Black far enough away from Mira to begin stabilizing her."
The captain paused.
"As soon as that bay opens, I want you to begin your flight plan. Gunny's squad stays in the bay until we have Mira stabilized."
Aye, sir. That's the plan, Talby said.
"Good. Let's do this."
Acknowledged, sir. He cut the comms. Marines! He yelled. Conversation in the bay immediately died. Gunny and his squad of non-rates had all turned to face him, their bodies rigid and at parade rest. He couldn't help but smile despite the churning in his stomach. It's time to get kitted out. Helmets on, final pressure check on the suits, and then it's hurry up and wait. He jerked a thumb to the bay doors. After the bay opens, I'll be taking the 52 out. A few minutes after that, Black and Oakes will fire the thrusters aboard Mira. If she stabilizes properly, the gunny will fly you to the ship. Understood? Aye, sir, the Marines yelled. Gunny has already told you this, he continued, but I want to make sure it sticks. We can't afford any mistakes out there. Mistakes happen, Marines die, and I want every one of you back aboard S&R Black once this is finished, alive and safe. Understood? Aye, sir. Good. Talby forced a grin. Good hunting, Marines. Hoo-ha! Black! They yelled. Gunny, let's make it happen. Aye, sir. Talby felt he should say something else, but stopped himself. He wanted to tell them to hurry the fuck up so they could help with the search for Callie Moore's squad, but saying so was unnecessary and dangerous. If the Marines were thinking about their comrades rather than their jobs, someone else would undoubtedly get hurt. Either that, or they placed the harness wrong and possibly killed everyone. He spun on his heel, donned his helmet, and climbed into the SV-52 support vehicle. The moment he closed the cockpit, the controls lit up and his HUD glowed with readouts. He ran one last diagnostic check, settled his hands on the throttle and attitude thruster controls, and took in a deep breath. Talby ready, he announced over the comms.
Acknowledged,
Dunn said.
Gunny?
The lower left-hand portion of Talby's HUD displayed a video feed of the remaining skiff. Gunny sat in the command chair, Wint manning the gun.
Ready, sir. Opening bay doors,
Oakes said over the comms. The SV-52 shuddered as the large cargo bay doors slid aside and the remaining atmosphere jetted into space. Oakes had moved S&R Black more than half a kilometer away from Mira, but the giant ghost ship still filled his vision. From this distance, it was difficult to make out the damage to the hull and the superstructure. He only wished they'd stayed this far away from it to begin with.
Talby, you're a go for launch,
Oakes said. Acknowledged. Launching now,
Good hunting,
the captain said. Thank you, sir, he said, and demagnetized the craft. The 52 trembled slightly, and Talby hit the throttle. The support vehicle leaped from the cargo bay into space at 5 meters per second. Once he was far enough away from S&R Black, he cut the forward momentum and fired the hull thrusters. The SV-52 rose above S&R Black, the ship rapidly diminishing in the view from his hull cameras. At 100 meters, he froze his position and floated above the ship, the 52 matching its orbit. Talby, I'm in position. Over.
Acknowledged,
Oakes said. Mira slowly tumbled end over end through space. The bow was coming around now and soon would be in his sights. Talby focused the cameras on the bow's port side as it drifted into view, the rectangular shuttle bay bulging like a tumor. Talby's breathing stopped for a moment, and a hesitant grin crossed his lips. He zoomed in on the front of the shuttle bay, and there they... He stopped speaking to himself, the smile dying. For a moment, he thought he saw a figure attached on the side of the bay, but it was nothing more than a graphical anomaly cast by the 52's interpolation software. Damn it, he muttered. He was sure they would be there, but if they were still there, he told himself, they'd be out of oxygen. Right. Talby tried to find an airlock on the side of the shuttle bay, but he couldn't see one. He frowned and checked the schematics on his block. No airlock. The only ingress point was the shuttle bay doors themselves. Who the hell designed this thing? He wondered. Even S&R Black had an airlock next to the cargo bay, allowing Marines an ingress-egress point without having to depressurize the area.
Talby,
Dunn's voice said through the comms. Aye, sir. Go ahead.
firing thrusters in 10.
Acknowledged, Talby said. The view in his HUD zoomed out once again, allowing him to see the entire length of Mira. Now was the dangerous part. Instead of firing all the thrusters at once, Black would activate them in groups to slow the tumble. Each set of thrusters would put stress on the Atmos steel hull and possibly cause further damage to Mira. If the force was too much, deck plating and other debris could explode inward or outward. Either way, the space around Mira might soon be cluttered with metal fragments far more dangerous than a shatterstorm. The 52 could weather minor impacts from ice as well as micrometeorites, but a large piece of metal debris could slice into the cabin, killing him instantly or jettisoning him into space. The last thing he wanted was to find himself untethered, floating free in a sea of deadly metal fragments. In that kind of mess, his suit would be torn to pieces in minutes, if not seconds. A surge of adrenaline raced through his blood and his heartbeat thumped in his ears. He watched the seconds tick off to 0, and then it happened. While Mira canted halfway through its 360-degree tumble, the thrusters atop the foredecks fired. He saw the orange and blue heat plumes pierce the darkness like tiny matches. The giant hulk held together, his tumble slowing slightly. He swallowed hard. His HUD showed no new debris flying off the hull. So far, so good. Another set fired from the aft. This time, not only was there debris, but it looked as though one of the hydrazine thrusters went straight through the hull plate. "God damn it," he said aloud. He zoomed in on the area, waiting impatiently for the software to cobble together a detailed picture of the damage. Debris puffed out of the new hole in the deck. Wires, cables, fragments of plating, and Void only knew what else, slowly expanded like a building thunderhead. Talby cursed again.
"Lieutenant,"
Black said through his block. "Go ahead," he said aloud.
"do you see the hazard?"
"Aye. My calculations show it's not an immediate threat to us. Am I right?"
"You are correct, Lieutenant. The debris field is heading away from Mira at a positive vector. Additional damage may occur on the next firing."
"Acknowledged,"
Talby,
Dunn said.
we're going to let Mira settle for a moment. Keep an eye on her.
"Aye, sir," he said. Mira continued her tumble, albeit slower than before. The failed thruster had shut off the moment it broke through the hull so it wouldn't cause additional problems by burying itself deeper into the interior decks. He wondered if the thruster placements were redundant enough to do the job. There was no way of telling how many more thrusters they'd lose on the most damaged parts of Mira's hull. Dunn announced they were firing another set of thrusters. Talby's fingers tightly clenched the throttle as he waited. Another set of plumes rose from the foredeck. Several small pieces of debris flew into the air. He zoomed in on them. He wasn't sure, but thought they looked like the pine cones. How many more of the things were on the ship anyway?
"Lieutenant,"
Black said.
"be advised, we are ready for another aft set."
Acknowledged. He zoomed back out, focused on the aft section of the ship, and waited. Pinpoints of light fired into the darkness. As he watched, a 15-meter slice of the extensively damaged engineering section seemed to shatter. "The Void wept," he said aloud. An entire deck plate had just crumbled into deadly fragments. "Talby to Dunn, you see that, sir?"
Yes, I do.
The captain said.
We'll deal with it. She's stabilizing little by little.
Talby muted his comms before saying, "If there's anything left of her, I'll be surprised." This time, Black didn't wait. The sets of thrusters on Mira's belly fired in sequence. Another deck plate exploded on the ship's aft, but the fore and mid decks held. Her tumble speed decreased once again. "Black, what's her rotation?"
360 degrees an hour, sir."
Well, that was something. If they couldn't slow her any more than that, they could work with it. He just hoped. Another set of thrusters fired. Mira vomited wreckage from the missing plates in her stern. From this distance, it was impossible to determine exactly what had happened, much less what had been dislodged. "Captain," he said, "a whole lot of junk was just jettisoned."
Acknowledged. Black was just about to tell you about it.
Talby rolled his eyes. "Aye, sir."
We have 2 more thruster burns. Hold tight.
"Copy that, sir," Talby said. His fingers tightened on the throttle and thruster controls. If Mira's deck plates continued to fracture under the strain of the thruster pressure, there was no telling what else could break free. He might have to move the 52 in a hurry. The 2 additional thruster burns didn't cause any more damage that he could see, at least not from this angle. Until he traveled to the starboard side of the derelict, it was impossible to know if additional plates had come loose and if there were any fresh punctures in the hull. Regardless of the damage, Talby grinned. Mira was stabilizing. The rotation had definitely slowed. "Black, what's her rotation?"
"Mira's tumble is now at 360 degrees every 5 hours.
"How many more thruster burns do we have?"
"We have 5 thrusters that still have fuel, Lieutenant. However, due to the damage, I have recommended we attempt to harness the ship."
The easy grin on his face disappeared. "You're suggesting we take what we can get?"
"Yes, Lieutenant. I am uncertain as to whether additional burns are worth further risk to Mira's superstructure, and as you know, we are running out of time."
Time. Yes, they were on a clock before a very large Kuiper Belt object entered the area and threatened both Mira and S&R Black. They had to fly the two ships out of danger. Once they were underway, he could search for the missing Marines without delay. Black's voice suddenly broke across the general comms.
Warning, my sensors are picking up radiation from Mira's aft.
Radiation?
Dunn asked.
What kind of?
Talby's feeds turned to static, as did his communications. A flare of bright light lit up the darkness for a brief instant. His HUD filters dampened the flare's intensity, but the afterimage still scarred his vision. Radiation alerts flashed across his HUD, complete with warning bells. The static on the comm channels disappeared, and the camera feeds came back to life. "What the hell was that?" Talby yelled through the comms.
Black?
Dunn asked.
Where did that come from, and what was it?
A short burst of gamma radiation.
Black said.
Where was it directed?
Dunn asked. Black paused.
The burst was directed in roughly the same direction from which Mira approached Sol system.
Talby blinked. So, back toward Proxima Centauri?
No, Lieutenant, toward where Mira came from.
He opened his mouth to say something and then closed it. Mira was supposed to travel to Proxima, but that didn't mean it had ever made it there. Damn, but Black could confuse him.
Are we in any danger?
Dunn asked.
No, Captain.
Black said.
The radiation was very short-lived and very directed. I doubt much of the energy affected Mira's superstructure.
Any idea what could cause that?
Dunn asked.
I thought the reactors were dead.
They are, Captain.
Black said.
Source of the radiation is unknown. However, I am detecting a loss of bandwidth across all communication spectrums. It's not presently enough to hinder radio or block transmissions, but it does shorten the effective range.
Understood,
The captain said.
Gunny? Aye, sir. Keep a watch on your rad counters. Black, if any of the harness anchor points are in that direction, find an alternative.
Yes, Captain.
Black said. Nervous energy thrummed in Talby's veins. He'd been in a hurry to get to Mira's bow from the moment he towed Gunny's skiff in half an hour ago. He had to find Kalimura and her squad, especially if Mira was trying to fry them. Captain, permission to fly to the bow and check for survivors.
Granted, Lieutenant. Gunny's squad will depart momentarily. Once they reach Mira, I want you to help cover the harness placement.
Understood, sir. Talby out. He oriented the SV-52 to put it on a course for Mira's bow and hit the throttle. As the craft rocketed away from S&R Black, Talby focused on the warning lights on his HUD. Debris was ahead of him. This was going to be a fun flight.